Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started. Lots to cover, but also lots of time for questions today. So as we're working to make sure that we're all ready for the spring state assessment, the forward exam. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen in just a moment. Okay. So things that we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at some of the resources. Some things have been updated. I want to make sure you're aware of that. We'll also talk about that during the presentation. Just kind of close up the whole loop on the alternate access field test. We're going to make sure that you feel as ready as you can be for the forward exam, which is on its way. In fact, next week it begins. And then we'll kind of finalize things with the dynamic learning maps. We'll talk about the spring screeners and the climate survey. As always, there's going to be time for questions, both during and at the end. So that being said, let's jump in. So on our website, we do have resources for you, and we're going to focus specifically on that today. Several of the forward resources are linked in there. Not only that, but also the coordinator page, in which I've got the agenda for today, as well as the slide deck, and I will have this recording there. Now, when you get a chance, because you will most likely want to do this, if you go to the mmsd.org/assessment, and then just go to the staff only page for elementary, you'll get to grade levels. And under the grade levels that are associated with the forward test, you will find forward resources. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later. But also keep in mind, and I know several of you have taken advantage of this, but every Monday between 2 and 3, there are office hours for our department, and we are always there or monitoring it. So please feel free to drop in and ask the questions, but that's also just a opportunity for you. If you have questions, certainly please email or call. All right, so let's get rolling here. We're going to talk about the alternate access for ELL's field test. Thank you so much. And I know this has not been an easy thing. Those of you who have been involved with this, please make sure you thank your team. I do appreciate it. This is almost completed. It is due at the end of this week. That's the last day for this, and then get them back to us. So if you have them all done, make sure everything gets back into that yellow box and send it to Sarah at Doyle in room 115A, or just send it to Sarah at Doyle. The mail folks know who we are. So please make sure that you get that and all the material that was sent to you. So just put it in the box. We will sort through it, make sure that that is taken care of. If there are things that need to be bubbled in, it would be greatly appreciated if you would bubble those in on the answer documents or the student documents, but that's really, really helpful, especially this time of year. So, all right, let's move on to the forward exam and final preparation. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things today, but mostly, again, I just want to make sure that we re-emphasize the fact that this is an assessment that is based on the state standards. The preparation that I'm providing you, that I provided you last month, talking about text-dependent analysis, is all aligned to state standards. And it is really critical to understand this. This is not something that should be viewed as an imposition. This is something that is aligned with our instruction, and it may not be exactly what our instruction looks like, but this is ultimately what our students are expected to know. The dynamic learning maps is also a critical piece in this. It is representative of the state standards for those students who are getting their education aligned with the essential elements. And so this assessment is also a very important piece to their education. So once again, the window is coming up. It is on March 20th through the 28th. There are no extensions, so if you run out of time, there's not much I can do to help you. So what we want to do is make sure that we get this everything set, front loaded, and make sure that you have the best opportunity to schedule all your students in and make sure that that is exactly what happens. Okay, so let's take a look at things we know. Again, it must be given in person. So when we do the forward test, and we'll talk about Madison Promise students, we will make sure that that it's clear about what can and cannot happen. Tickets are needed, and you have now the tickets in your possession. If you do not have tickets, you have not seen those, please let us know right away. So if you should have that is considered secure material. So please treat that as such and make sure that you include that keep that in a secure locked area. Okay, now the tickets. We'll talk about some of the things that you need to know about those tickets and what they do tell you and what they don't. So they reflect the information that you provided. Sarah sent the Google Doc out to everybody, and thank you to everyone who provided that back. I think we've got everybody covered, but I know that there are changes as well. So the tickets represent that information, that data that goes into the backside of this platform. Now, if there are changes, whether it's a changed IEP, a brand new IEP, a 504, or changes to English learner supports, you need to let us know. Make sure that it's not, I'm testing in 15 minutes and I need to get this changed, because we can't guarantee that that will happen. We'd love to make that happen, but we really cannot. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do to ensure that we've got everything in place prior to students logging in and taking the test. When changes are made, we get to them as fast as possible, but please give us at least 24 hours to make these changes. You may need to print a new ticket, and we'll tell you when it's time to print a new ticket. So you may not have to do that, and this is a change from what we've seen in the past. So just because you have a change in the supports, the structure, does not mean you'll need a new ticket, but you definitely need to have the student's ticket. So when you got your tickets, I want to just share with you a little bit of what you got. You got at least 3 different pages. Now, the first page is simply an overview, and it provides you all kinds of information about that packet, that set of tickets. The second page, or what begins on the second page, is actually your student roster. So that will be by grade level and by content area. And so you will have what I've taken out here is I made sure that we don't have any student information here. Student name, local student ID. So if you're in question about which student is which, they have 2 students the same name, you check their MMSD ID. It then lists, so you have a master list of the username and password for that student. Here's the thing that you need to look at. And you can look at this either on this page, the roster page, or if you want to go in and take a look at specific tickets about information there, that's also there. So please make sure that you check to ensure that there are accommodations for each of the students as were requested. Accommodations are over on the right-hand side, and they are listed here. You'll see TTS, which stands for text to speech. I'll give you an idea of where you can find information about what these all stand for a little bit later. But just do maybe you and your team want to sit down by grade level and just say, make sure that that I have what I need as a learner. If I have accommodations that were requested, that they are there. So if there are not, that's when you need to make sure that you double check, first of all, the IEP, but also then send us that information. The tickets themselves are in multiple pages. They're the third different kind of of page that was sent to you. So they look something like this. 6 to a page. You'll have the student name, their MMSD ID, the grade level, and what test this is going to be, and then their username and password. Again, it will also show on the ticket what accommodation it is that they are actually provided on the back side of all of this. So if they are incorrect, the best time to tell us is prior to starting the test. If they are incorrect and you tell us after we start the test, we have very limited options as far as what we can do to change that that pathway for the student. Students who are in a test for less than 2 minutes and less than 2 questions, I will be able to go in and either completely get rid of or have them start over that particular test. If they are in for longer than 2 minutes or are looking at more than 2 questions, then that's not an option. Even when we get, if we get a student who has completed the test and then it said, well, they didn't get their accommodations, then we have to test them all over again with their accommodations. And that, is absolutely one of the things I want to avoid, because there are way too much time spent giving the assessment to actually do it more than once. So if you notify either Sarah or myself as soon as possible, we'll get that changed, and you then may have to print new tickets. And there is a how-to document on the forward page for how to print new tickets. The accessibility guide is also on that page, and in that there is a, what does the abbreviation MSK stand for? For instance, you'll see that it is masking, and it describes what it is that allows students to do to cover up information on a page so that they're only looking at a portion of it at a time. What's some guidance? Again, students with attention difficulties, visual impairments, or other print disabilities may find that masking is helpful during the assessment. This should, again, be something that is typical in a classroom where they might use a sheet of paper to cover up a portion of the assignment so that it is clear as to where it is they should be. So that's an example of masking and one of the designated supports that you don't need an IEP for. So this is something that we can have and add to that list if that is something that is provided for students regularly. Okay, now it is really, this is a snapshot of the forward page for the elementary side. And one of the things that I've added are some key components to what it is that we're trying to do. Please keep in mind that we are working to build with families and with staff an awareness and understanding of the importance of these assessments. Participation is really important, and we want to shift the narrative of what's out there. So it's like, oh, these are bad, these are terrible. No, we want to make sure that the messages that families get talk about what it is that is important and why these are important. The whole process of many people opting out has really hurt our schools. Not only instructionally, because we need this information to improve our instructional practices at the district level, but also at the school level. It does impact things that happen at the school level. So we really want you to take a look at some of this information, the strategic communication plan. We want to make sure we spread the word to families. So making sure that you get information out to families is really important. So we have on our webpage, we have several things that we've just added, a communication timeline and resources. So if you are looking for the letters Not only will you find them here separated out on the left-hand side of this column, this would be an example of a letter. So those are updated, and you will find them in Word so that you can put in your school-specific letterhead, your school-specific testing information. But you'll find that in Spanish, English, and Hmong. But there's also a timeline. We really would like this to get out to families in a timely manner, not just the day before a test, but please make sure that you get that out. There are strategies here about positive testing environments, positive reinforcement, making sure that our students know that this is something that is going to be helpful. The practice test that we have, again, third grade students should absolutely be involved in experiencing some of the forward test, what it looks like, how to navigate to move around in it. The online resource link here will provide you information about the practice tests, to how to use the accommodations or the supports, the tools that are online, as well as short videos for each grade level that can be used by teachers. So if you are not, let's say you're in a 5th grade classroom and you know the students have done this before, but just it's good to remind them about this. There's a short video, a couple minutes, that would be good to show them, as well as just make sure that they understand the importance of this. As I shared with you last month, the text-dependent analysis is the very first assessment piece that needs to be administered for this particular test. Keeping in mind, and we'll talk again a little bit about this, but keeping in mind that this is it's a critical piece to help start off on the right foot for this assessment. You'll also find sample newsletter and social media documents there. There is a slide deck that can be used for communication with families or even with staff. And then there's a facilitator guide for that slide deck. All of this information can be found on the link that's over here on the left, and you will be able to find this link to the, this is the page, making sure that everybody is still there. Yep, okay. So this again is our forward staff coordinator information. You can see this over on the left are the letters. They were also found in the administrative bulletin on February 23rd and March 2nd. So I apologize for those of you who did not get that information. I should have had this up here sooner, but the letters are here now. Please make sure that you see also that, again, these are live links. And Sarah said, yes, it's also been included. This link to this document has been included in the agenda. So, okay, let's continue on. Again, the importance of letters, the importance of testing, positive testing, and decreasing the stress on students and staff, practice, and the TDA. Great question. Can the letter be shared via email, or do most of our schools physically print it? I would say that you should handle it how you handle all or the vast majority of school level parent communication. So if that means you send it out in a physical copy, then that's what you should do. I would also urge you to send that out electronically to families as well. So yes, thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it. Again, one of the things that's really important is to make sure that we know what other schools are actually doing. So emailing it to families and sharing it electronically is fine. So you may want to try emailing all 3 of the letters together, because again, that may, or if you've got a list of who gets Hmong communication, for instance, you can send that only the Hmong letter to families. Okay. You should have received 5 copies of the test administration manual. Again, this is something that will help you as you get ready for proctoring at a grade level. If you need more copies, There is the PDF on that website, the Forward resource website. If you can print those in-house, that would be great. It takes much longer to get them as we go through the printing services process. Keep in mind that you also need to view the security training and sign that security agreement. I have received many copies of the security agreement from the building coordinators. Thank you very much. I appreciate your timeliness and looking into that. If we get to next Monday and I haven't received yours, I get it. People are busy. I will be emailing you, asking you to sign. I'll send a version of that, a PDF of that. You could sign and send that back. I do need to have this so that we can assure that everybody at least understands the security that surrounds the test itself and all the components of it. Please review the script that's in the test administration manual prior to test administration. So you should be aware of that there's a script that says, read this, do this. We also know that students will be using their Chromebooks, and we'll be talking a little bit more about the technology in just a moment. So all those who are involved in administering the Forward exam do need to have some professional development as well as sign off on that security agreement. Again, remember, this is the security agreement from the staff, and you hang on to that. I would suggest putting it in an envelope, labeling it with the date, and 1 year from now, just shred those things because we'll be back getting next year's assessment documents. So the assessment is video based, and the link to YouTube is here. You can produce a document that shows the slides that they go through. So people like to take notes. If they've never been through this, that would be, I think, a good thing. And then make sure that they have that available. Finally, the security piece. I have signed and sent off to DPI the agreement that I need to sign, saying that we're taking this seriously, that we're going to follow all of this. So there is a 7-minute security video, and if you click on that link, you will have that. Again, folks in your schools may want to take a look at that. I think we probably would be a good thing. So now we're up to 30 minutes plus a 7-minute. And so that they feel more comfortable signing that agreement. If you do need to find out the state test security document, which I believe the security memo mentions, that is also on the Forward assessment website that we've built out in the district. Okay. Now, we've gone through some of this before, but now it becomes more real. So I want to just do this again. As you think of scheduling and making sure, if you haven't already gotten something figured out, it's really time to start doing that. If you need help, reach out to me. I can connect you with other folks at other buildings that have gone through this before, and they can share their schedule with you. Again, the requirement that the state has is that we test English Language Arts Session 1 first, and that is the text-dependent analysis. There are 4 sessions of ELA. They can go in any order with the exception of that one. Same thing is true with math and science. There are 3 sessions. They are not dependent upon one or the other. So once again, if a student logs in and signs into session 4 when you were doing session 3 for ELA, you can either stop them. Please don't allow them to submit it. If they're only in there for 2 minutes or less, etc., then you know that I can scrub that out. Or another thing would be just to let them go, let them complete that session. So I would please keep in mind the amount of time that it takes for those sessions, though. So session 3 and session 4 are not equivalent. There are 2 sections of social studies, and let's take a look more closely at this. Okay, so here are the time in minutes that are approximate for all of the sessions. So approximately 130 minutes for ELA, 90 minutes for mathematics, and 105 for science, and 70 for social studies for our fourth graders. You can see how ELA breaks down. Again, these are this is an untimed test. These are approximations. Now, notice that session 3 is listening. You will need to have headsets so that students can listen without interrupting anyone else in the room. So if you don't have headsets, every school should have them. There were bins shared a couple years ago, and hopefully you have those left. I have a few. If you are interested, please let me know. We can see what we can do. The other option is that students can bring in their own earbuds. Right? There's no need to record a voice in this, so we don't need to have anything that's really special, but you do need to be able to listen clearly. Now, here's one thing. You cannot have Bluetooth earbuds. So if you've got the Apple iPods, they cannot use those because we actually don't know which device that they are connected to. And so it is a security issue. So the wireless we can't use. Wired headsets and earbuds, absolutely just fine.
Tim, can I pop in to mention
Yes,
one more thing about sessions? So Tim already talked about how if we want a test unlocked, like if a student accidentally submits it, it needs to be that the student was either in the test less than 2 minutes or has completed 2 items or less. There is one exception to that, and that is for the TDA, the text dependent analysis. That one, both Tim and I may reopen that student's test at any point. So if you have students who submit them too soon, just email us right away. We'll unlock that for it. That's the one we don't need permission to unlock. The other ones we'll have to seek permission from DPI. So just a good reminder, because I know that one, it happens, especially with our younger kids frequently.
Thanks. And especially it happens when it's their first time, the third graders. I mean, it's also the first session. So typically in the first session, we get all the issues of technology. It says, talk to the test administrator. And, like, oh, I clicked on submit, I wasn't done. Those kinds of things tend to come up on that first session right away. So please make sure that you know that you can ask us to help out. Lisa, you have a question.
Hi, Tim. Just to clarify, ELA session 1, is that required to be done first? Because we would rather not.
So,
because I feel like if they start off with the essay, the hardest test of ELA altogether, that it might discourage them from the rest of the test. And so we kind of shifted sessions around on our timeline that we've already handed out.
Okay, so I completely understand what you're saying. Here's the flip side of it. Students are freshest when you start with a TDA. And that's what the state would like you to do. Is it a requirement set in stone? Let's put it this way, it's set in plaster. It's not set in stone. If you've already done that, I would, we can touch base on this. I would say, if you've done session 2 or session 3 first to warm them up, I'm probably okay as long as if you've handed that out already, but otherwise session 1 needs to be first. So if you haven't scheduled, or if you can change your schedule, let's keep that session 1 first. And I do get what you're saying, Lisa. You want them to have success. And that's why, again, keep in mind that with session 1, you can have that, that writer's checklist on their desk with them. And hopefully they've had a chance to use that as well. So thanks. I appreciate that question. Mathematics, there are 2 sessions. There are, when it's appropriate, there's a calculator built in. You don't need a calculator, but again, students may want to have that. The only time you can use a physical calculator is if you have an accommodation for that. Same thing is true with multiplication tables. That's only an accommodation. So students without that in their IEP cannot use a multiplication table or a physical calculator. It's all online. Science being about equal in each of the sessions, 35 minutes. And then same thing is true with social studies. So our 4th graders do have those extra blocks of time for assessment. Okay, now, again, we really are working hard to make sure that we are not getting a ton of opt-outs. I know that's a family choice, but when you get one, if you get one, please make sure that it's in writing, that you email myself or Sarah Wallner that in writing. We'll record that because I have to report to this to the Board of Education. This does have an impact on your school, and things that will be, you may have heard the term ATSI, TSI, federal identifications. This is a critical piece, and we don't want our schools to be undeservedly identified. So please make sure if you have any questions about that, you connect with me. All right. Madison Promise students. We have been looking and trying to work on a way that those students can all test in a single location, but we have not found that to be able to work. So once again, you should be inviting your students who are in Madison Promise. And if you don't know who those are, we can provide you a list. But please invite them to test at your school in person. Make sure that you connect with them and their families. I would probably also suggest that you include Andrew Stendal so he can kind of keep track of where these students are, who's tested and who is not. And if you do have trouble connecting with the families, that Andrew can certainly help you. Hopefully that will take care of that. Now I'm going to pause here. I'm going to stop sharing and just see what questions you might have regarding the forward test, because I'm going to shift gears, but I want to make sure that you have what you need to feel comfortable going into the forward test coming up.
Not a question that's come up today, but one that I frequently get is, what about new students? Whose responsibility is it to let me know, etc. So just to give a brief outline about new and incoming students and transfers, it's a pretty busy test season. So we do our best to add them to the testing database as soon as possible after they enroll. There are a couple factors that keep us from doing it immediately. Sometimes new students to the state need a state ID number in order for us to add them to the testing database. So you might see a delay on that, like about a week. So I think rule of thumb is if you are expecting a new student, you can email me right away and I can let you know where the status is, or you can check eDirect, see if they're there. I don't always send an email when I add new students, but you can print tickets as soon as they're available in eDirect, and never hesitate to send me an email if you're wondering about a specific student and their testing status.
And likewise, we always get the question about students who are new to the country. And so there are situations in which students who are new to the country they can qualify for being a one-time exemption from the English language arts portion of the forward test. That's it. The rest of it. So if they're a 4th grader and they're new to the country, they still have to do mathematics, science, and social studies. But that being said, so the qualifications are they're in the United States for less than 1 year, and they have a 1 or a 2 level language, DPI language level. Either one of those, but both characteristics must be true. So if they were, let's say they arrived in February of last year, February of 2022, and they just have taken the access test this year for the first time, and we, basically it's like, no, they're still struggling. We know from their screener that they're probably a level 1. Unfortunately, because of when they arrive, that box is not checked. They are not eligible for the one-time exemption from Forward this year. They probably got it last year when they were in. So a question has also come up: what happens if a student does have that exemption? And probably we would like to see how they do on the test. I am okay with that, but let's not press students who are learners of English that are at the lowest level to take a test in English. We're already going to be doing, at minimum, the mathematics portion of it. So if you have questions about that, please let us know as well. Sarah, anything else that you can think of?
No, but keep the questions coming. If you think of things after today that come up, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time with these questions.
Lisa, what you got?
Hi, Tim, this is Mickey actually, but
Oh.
that's okay. We've been getting some mixed messages on who can proctor and who cannot proctor. So we did look up at the DPI website, and it said paraprofessionals are allowed to proctor. So is that is there a Madison difference on that, or?
Here's my take on it, is that number one, I'm good with a paraprofessional proctoring, but they should also be working in conjunction with a certified teacher. Doesn't have to be in the same room, but they should be working together. And this is especially true if you've got small groups where students have accommodations that they will be in. So it is fine. Again, I would suggest that we do this under the guidance of a licensed teacher. Does that make sense?
That does. What about others in the building, like BRS, I think is her title, or student engagement coordinator, or any of those things?
So the BRS does not have in their contract anything along those lines. In fact, they're there to help if there is some translation needed, etc. But I would suggest not having them proctor the test. The other folks, whatever their titles are, I would see if you could avoid that. I'm not saying no, because it can be, it's adults that are employed by the district can give the proctor the assessment. That being said, they may or may not have the background in order to do that. Make sure that if all the people who are involved do the professional development, and if there are questions, if they have questions that can't be answered locally, please let me know what those are. But so it cannot be a parent, cannot be a volunteer. If a teacher happens to be teaching in the school and their children are there, they cannot proctor their children's exam. So for instance, if you have a fourth grade teacher whose child is in fourth grade, even if they happen to be in the same classroom for at least some of the content areas, they need to test in another adult's setting.
You're reading our mind. That's exactly the situation we have. So can long-term subs or proctor?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Again, so they're hired by the district. The biggest thing especially with long-term subs with paraprofessionals is if there's ever a problem and something happens with a student's test, I don't want them to be, held responsible for that. That's not what they do on a regular basis. So if there are issues, if there are questions, please do not hesitate to connect with me, myself or Sarah, as soon as possible. We're here to make sure that this goes as smoothly as possible for you. Yes, so long-term subs, absolutely. Again, same requirement. They need to go through the professional development and sign off on that confidentiality agreement. What other questions? Okay, so let's finish up and we'll again open to more questions if there are some at the end of this. I'm going to start the slides again because going on at the same time, the same window, is the dynamic learning map assessment. So we talked about this last time, but again, the dynamic learning map assessment is for those students who are being taught to the essential elements based on an IEP. And this is an assessment that is appropriate for students who are on that particular pathway. So students who are getting the alternative assessment, dynamic learning maps, DLM, have already been identified. Staff have been identified and notified. They've been through the professional development. Just so you're aware of it, there is something called the first contact and the personal needs profile. So there are different ways of actually administering this based on the student's strengths. And so that's what that portion is. On the 20th, next Monday, the DLM opens, as does the forward. And so they can begin that process as well. Keep in mind, it is also just as important for those students to have a standards-based assessment from the state. And it carries the same weight for them as if it were the forward exam, as well as for the school. So this is something I just want to say, we don't take this lightly. It is a small number of students in elementary who get this particular assessment, in fact, across the district, but it could be significant and it does count. All right, so we're almost done. Taking a deep breath, we're going to make it through forward just fine, and everyone here is going to do great. We're going to have, we've got tech services on board. They are all ready to roll. We've got everybody in readiness, and we're going to be having a good testing administration season. After that, a couple things I want you to just remember. So the spring window for FastBridge screening, and I know you don't like to hear about more assessment, but the screener, it opens in May. Remember that the window for the forward goes from March 20th through April 28th. Here's a suggestion as far as scheduling, if you haven't already done so. Thinking about these two test windows, if you are scheduling grade levels, for instance, you've got third grade, you're going to start fourth grade because they have the most go, and then fifth grade. I would not do fourth grade, for instance, finishing up at the end of the forward window and then turn them around the next week and already test them in FastBridge. You have 4 weeks for the FastBridge screeners. So please make sure that you think about the spacing, give everybody a breather so that they can just sit back and go, okay, accomplish that. And now it's on to the next piece. Beginning in the middle of April and going to the middle of May, there will be from the district, we'll be going through the climate survey for students as well as staff and families. So that is coming up. And then also for our youngest learners, the year-end PALS window, beginning of, the middle of April through close to the end of May. So that's what's coming up. We'll talk about that more. We'll have one more of these particular meetings. We'll talk about data at that point, about getting results back to families. using results in schools, and then also any issues with the spring screeners, etc. So that meeting will be in April. All right. Again, here's the contact information, myself, Sarah Wallner, Lindsay Malio, who is a great resource to have on our team. And so she can answer questions about all kinds of things. So please keep her in mind as well. All right. So once again, we'll find ourselves saying, what questions do you have? Okay, I'm going to stop recording and then we'll hang out for a little while yet and see if anybody wants to make sure